Good evening, Chaturani. Hello, Chaturani. Can you hear me? Good evening, Yoganandi.
Good evening, ma'am.
Afasa Chaturani. Good evening.
Good evening.
Right. Okay. Now we'll start. Right. Let them the others join. Right. Last week we stopped halfway this presentation. We are learning about language issues, right? So especially when we are comparing the countries, we have to think of language, right? So even Sri Lankans, right? They are preferring to migrate for English education countries rather than other countries, right? So if they are going to Russia, they have to learn that language, right, first, and then so with that language only, they are not going to offer courses in English only in Russia. Even in Japan, it's also the same. You have to learn the language first, right? So the language issue is there, right? It's a common problem. And when we are comparing, right, English speaking countries and other languages, right, so now, of course, right, most of the countries are trying to learn English, um, and the thing is, this Japan country, they have translated all the books, right, into Japan. So they are okay, they're comfortable because they can learn in their mother tongue, right? But not in the other countries, right? Okay, so key features of bilingual education in the US, right? So we are learning about one by one, right? US also a multinational national country. Lot of people, different country people are living there, right? So native people also there. They have this two-way immersion, dual language. So the two-way immersion programs are designed to benefit both English-speaking students and non-English speaking students, because the native speakers also there, foreigners also there. So they are having two-way immersion programs. That means it is suitable for these English speaking as well as non-speaking. In these programs, students are taught in both English and the home language, with the goal of fostering bilingualism and biliteracy for all students. Right? So they have to do that because they are the people who invited other country people, right? Especially in the US, you know, they are offering green cards, right? Green card lottery. So why they are having that green card lottery in some places, right? So it's very less people are living, right? So the Canada, the Australia, America, right? Those countries are very big, huge countries, but less population. So that's what they are encouraging people to come in. Now uh, they don't want, right? But anyway, so the people who went there, right? So they have to cater them, right? So that's what they are having, that two-way immersion. That means they are using dual language. The The common language is English, but also home language. Uh, for example, a class may have a mix of native English speakers and native Spanish speakers, and both groups would learn in both languages. Right? So if they did so, right, so the students will be comfortable, because non-native people have to learn, no, right? So they are also in the class. So two-way immersion and transitional bilingual education, right? So even last week we are starting, we are talking about the bilingual education because as you all know, in English, in Sri Lanka also, right? Earlier they had English medium, right? In before 1959, English medium was there, right? Well developed. But after that, they switch on to mother tongue education, right? So recently again, they have started English medium. So from mother tongue to English medium means it's a transition period. To these familiarize those children to the English language, right? So they started the bilingual education, right? So they are blended with mother tongue, and slowly they are switched on to English. So transitional bilingual education. In transitional bilingual education, also known as early exit program, students initially receive instruction in their home language while they are gradually immersed in English. The goal is to transition students into full English language instruction as quickly as possible, typically within 1 to 3 years. So same thing is happening in Sri Lankan universities also, state universities. So the students are coming from all over the country, right? In some countries, especially the children coming from city, they can manage with English, right? Sometimes village students, they are not up to the standard in English. So they are giving a grace period, right? So they can use both languages for 1 year. And after that, they have to switch on to English, right? Especially, so art stream, maybe they are doing, they can learn in their mother tongue. But science stream, right? So maybe medicine, veterinary, dental, and biological sciences, physical sciences, all are, those streams have to be learned in English, right? So those who are entering for those streams, right? So they have to, forcibly, they have to switch on to English, right? So these programs are often used with children who speak languages such as Spanish. This is regarding America. So in America, Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese are there. So they are considering these languages also, right? With the home language used as a bridge to understanding content until the student is proficient in English, right? So when the children are coming, even in our campus, loan scheme students are coming in. So the loan scheme students also from different places, right? So even they are coming from rural areas. So they are finding difficult to uh, speak in English in the first year, right? And some children, they will they will quit, right? So they don't, they are scared. They are thinking, don't know whether we can manage, right? So normally that will happen. So normally even in the normal classes, right, 60 to 70 students will recruit. And then within 1 month, right, so at least 10 to 20 students will drop because of English. They are scared of English, right? But they don't know that they are, they are no, they are coming to learn in English media, right? Anyway, they are feeling, right? So they are scared of English, and so they don't want to continue, right? So to avoid these things, right? So US also having these two type of programs, two-way immersion and transitional bilingual education. For what they are having this maintenance bilingual education. So they have to give a helping hand to those non-speaking English paper. So in maintenance bilingual education, uh, so the focus on maintaining the developing fluency in both the home language and English over a longer period. So these programs typically last longer than transitional programs and aim to foster full bilingualism and biliteracy, right? So we can see the progress in children, right? So in the first semester, when we are correcting the exam papers, right, sometimes some children, right, they used to put singular words also, right, in between, because the vocabulary is not there. But definitely they will progress in the second semester. right? In the third, fourth semester, they will be okay, right? And sixth semester, sixth, seventh semester, right? So they can present very well in English, right? So language can, that's what in Sri Lanka, maths and English, right? Both language, both subject, right? Having some sort of lacking, right? Even the percentage is little bit low, right? The results percentage. This type of program is more likely to be found in communities with a significant number of students who speak the same home language, Spanish in areas with many Latin students, right? So, English as a second language. So we also started like that, no, right? English as a second language, but later they change into link language, then international language, right? So here in US, right, English as a second language, ESL programs. So although not strictly bilingual education, ESL programs are another form of language support for ELLS. In these programs, students are taught in English, but often with additional language support and specially designed materials to help them learn both the languages and the academic content. Some schools offer ESL alongside other forms of bilingual education, especially in the early stages of language acquisition. Right? So some schools, right? Schools also offer this as English as a second language program alongside other forms of bilingual education. So that means they are English, right? So bilingual, and then parallelly ESL program. So the children will get more exposure to English language. So now, historical context. The history of bilingual education in the US has been shaped by debates over language, culture, and national identity. Several important milestones. So in every country, multicultural countries are having this historical context, right? Education, right? So something happened, right? So in the same way, uh, in the early 20th century, US, right, have this bilingual education system. Um, so bilingual education began in response to the large number of immigrants coming to the US in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. At that time, bilingual education was more common in some communities, especially in German, Italian, Spanish-speaking population. So, however, the emphasis was generally on Americanization, and over time, policies favored English-only instruction. Anyway, they wanted to make English only instruction. So they are preparing the students for that. That's what they are using bilingual education. So in 1960 to 70, the civil rights movement and the bilingual education advocacy led to the recognition that non-English speaking students were being disadvantaged in school setting. This resulted in passing of the Bilingual Education Act of 1968, which provided federal funds to support bilingual education programs. Right, so even though they are thinking of English education, right, so this bilingual education also needed for non-English speaking students. So they brought a act, Bilingual Education Act of 1968. So the Bilingual Education Act aimed to improve the educational opportunities for students with limited English proficiency and acknowledge the importance of preserving native languages. So 1980-90, in between these two 10 years, decade, the rise of English only movements in the 1980s, 90s. For example, Proposition 227 in California in 1998. Right. So now they are starting because their native language is English. So they are rising. The one movement is rising English only movements. Right. So no bilingual and no supporting for other languages. So debates whether bilingual education should be a priority. Critics argued that it delayed English acquisition and kept students from integrating into mainstream society. Supporters of bilingual education countered that it helped students succeed academically and maintain their cultural identity. Now there is a small conflict, right? Because the native people are fighting English only movement. They are so they are thinking it's waste of time, right? But the other multicultural people they need, right? And in 2001, no child left behind that. Further shifted federal educational policy, emphasizing standardizing testing and accountability, which affected how bilingual education programs were evaluated. Right? So that even in all countries, right? So different culture, different country people are living with one culture, right? So even in Islam countries, right? So they are the culture people and ethnic people are living, right? So, and some countries, they are thinking it is very rich to have multi-ethnic culture. And some countries, right, they don't like. And in 2000, in recent years, there has been push for dual language immersion programs, as research has shown that bilingualism has cognitive, academic, social benefits, right? So at the same time, there is still considerable variation in bilingual education policies across states, right? So still it is debatable, right? Some people are opposing and some people requesting. So they have some sort of um, this So I don't know why it's disturbing things are there. I don't know why, right? Right. Okay, now, so legal and policy framework, right? So now they are going to make it legal and policy framework. So first one is the Equal Educational Opportunities Act of 1974, right? So we have to understand that, right? So if there are multicultural students in a country like US, right? So equal opportunities have to give, right? So this law mandates that schools must take appropriate action to help non-English speaking students overcome language barriers so they can participate meaningfully in instructional programs. And in 1974, right, another landmark Supreme Court decision established that school must provide language assistance to students who are not proficient in English to ensure they have an equal opportunity to participate in public education. So this decision was central to the expansion of bilingual education programs in the 1970s to 1980s. Another policy framework, Every Student Succeeded Act. Right? That is very recent one, 2015. ESSA reauthorized and replaced the No Child Left Behind Act, continuing to support programs for English in the education of students who are English learners and encourages more research into effective bilingual and English language development programs. Right. So when we are learning this comparative education, you would have understood, right? Not only Sri Lanka is having language problem, all the other countries also have it, right? So if multi-ethnic people are living, definitely, so they have to face these type of things. So the challenges, funding and resources, teacher shortages, political and public opinion. Right. So so for bilingual education, they have to spend more money, no, right? It's an extra burden for that government. So the funding resources is a challenge and teacher shortage, right? Because multi-ethnic means multicultural and multi-language people are there. So we have to provide for each language teachers, right? So, so per class, right? You have to provide teachers. So that also a problem, challenge, shortage. So particularly in language other than Spanish, Arabic, Mandarin, indigenous languages, it's very difficult to find teachers. And political and public opinion, of course, it is conflict, right? So one side people are telling bilingual education is needed, and the other people are telling, right, it is not needed because it's waste of time. The program effectiveness, research on the effectiveness of bilingual education is mixed. While studies suggest that well-designed bilingual programs can lead to higher academic achievement and stronger language skills, the quality of implementation can vary widely. Some bilingual programs may focus more on language development at the expense of content knowledge, leading to concern about overall academic outcomes. So still there, it's a debatable thing, right? And the research shows, right, the effectiveness, the bilingual education, that means well-designed bilingual programs can lead to higher academic performance, right? And benefits of bilingual education, cognitive benefits, knowledge, you can read, right? Research shows that bilingual students tend to perform better in tasks requiring cognitive flexibility, problem solving, and creativity, right? So knowledge-wise, it's benefit, right? Because bilingual education means you're teaching in their mother tongue also, so they can creatively think, they can solve the problem. If they can't understand, they can't do it. And cultural awareness, right? So when they are learning different languages, they will learn the culture, they will get the cultural understanding and appreciation, which is crucial in a multicultural society like US. And long-term academic success, students in well-implemented bilingual programs tend to maintain higher academic achievement both in their home language and English over time. Global competitiveness. So this is also one problem now we are facing, right? So we are in the global village. So we have to compete with other countries. So in an increasingly globalized world, bilingualism is a valuable skill in the workforce, making bilingual education an asset for students' future career prospects. So the exchange programs, right? So, so recently in our campus, right? So the US students, UK students came, 20 students came, and it's for science faculty, right? That students came and learned with our students, did so practicals and visit our this zoo and scientific places, right? Uh, so the other countries like Japan, Korea, right? So they have this language barrier. Sri Lankan children can't speak Japan and Korea. Now they are learning, right? The job working purposes they are learning, and I think this for Japan exam, more than 10 to 15,000 people are writing the exam, sitting for the examination, right? So they are so Japan government is offering job opportunities only for people who know and can converse in Japan, right? So this qualification is important for that people are learning, right? So here, especially lecturers, right? Sometimes if they did the PhD or anything in Japan, they can speak. Other than that, they can't, right? So that barrier is there, right? So actually, we have to think of multi-language. So if here we have to provide them, right? The language, their home language, right? So that global competitiveness, making bilingual education an asset for students' future career prospects. So as conclusion of US bilingual education, helping students from non-English speaking background succeeded academically while maintaining their cultural and linguistic heritage by complex political, social, and economic factors. While there is growing recognition of the benefits of bilingualism, challenges related to funding, teacher shortage, and political debates continue to affect how bilingual education is provided across the country, right? So that is the conclusion of US bilingual education. And now we are moving to language policies and problems in Australia, right? So US, Australia, and Russia, right? These things are new to you all, right? That's what I'm repeating a little, right? Yeah, because within 1 week, sometimes you might forget, right? I think you can't remember, otherwise you would have told me that we have done this, right? So language policies and problems in Australia. So even in US, there are native people, right? So in Australia also the same, right? So Australia is a linguistically diverse country, same like US, home to many languages spoken by various communities. So language problems and policies in Australia are shaped by nation's history of migration, the legacy of British colonization, and the ongoing challenges of managing linguistic diversity in a pluralistic society. Right, so we will learn what is pluralistic society also in another presentation. So Australia's approach to language policy reflects tension between preserving indigenous languages, accommodating migrant languages, and promoting English as the dominant language. So as like US, right, even here they wanted to promote English as a dominant language, right? But they don't want to eradicate the other languages also. Indigenous language also needed, right? So that problem is there. So key issues in language policy, indigenous languages. So endangerment of indigenous language, that means the indigenous people, number of indigenous people are very less now, right? Even the indigenous children also wanted to come to the mainstream of schools. So slowly they are changing, right? So Australia is home to a rich linguistic heritage with over 250 indigenous languages, once spoken across the continent. However, many of these languages are now endangered with only a handful spoken by younger generation. Right, so that indigenous people's generations are uh, not following the uh, um, these parents indigenous to change. So revitalization efforts, there have been growing efforts to revitalize indigenous languages, including community-based program, academic research, and government support for language preservation. However, challenges remain in terms of resources, intergenerational transmission, and the dominance of English. So think of Vedas in our community, Sri Lankan community, right? So they are residing in particular places, right? Even those children are coming to the mainstream schools now. So little they are changing, right? The second generation is going to be the normal children, right? So even the Vedas community is also in endangered in Sri Lanka, right? They are reducing number of uh, so the number, that means the percentage of indigenous people are reducing. So migration and multiculturalism. Because of this migration, the countries have to face this problem. Since World War II, Australia has experienced significant immigration, particularly from non-English speaking countries in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. This has led to a multicultural society where multiple languages are spoken with Italian, Greek, Mandarin, Arabic, Cantonese, and Vietnamese being among the most common. So all over the world, right? So people are coming to reside in these countries, right? So these are the huge countries: Australia, and US, Canada, right? UK. So language maintenance versus assimilation. So Australia's language policies have fluctuated between encouraging and maintenance of heritage languages and promoting the assimilation of migration into English-speaking mainstream society. Right, so even our people, right, Sri Lankans also went as migrant. Most of the people, they were not aware of English, right? But they are second generation, they are children, right? They are learning in the mainstream school. So now they are like that country's native students, right? Uh, Only the parents are suffering, right? The first generation, and the second generation is okay with, and now they are like, because they are citizens of that country, so they are like so they are calling as Canadians, Americans, Australians, right? They are comfortable, young generation, right? uh, English as the national language, English dominance. English is the de facto official language of Australia. Even for you states also the same, right? The dominant, the official language is English. Government, education, business, and media. The government and many institutions encourage migrants to learn English both for practical reasons and for social integration. Citizenship, right? They're expecting you to be good in English, and sometimes some countries are requesting for IELTS or TOEFL. Um, for employment, right? Uh, so without English, it's difficult to get jobs, right? So while English proficiency is essential for success, so refugees struggle with English language acquisition, which can lead to social exclusion, educational disadvantage, and difficulty accessing services. So especially the adults, right? That means senior citizens of uh, uh, those who have migrated, right? They are finding difficult to learn that language. Not all, few, right? So if they don't know that English language, especially in UK, right, they can't survive, right? Because everything is in English. Its official language is English. So if you need to do something, definitely maybe bank work or maybe in the hospital, right? So you need that language, even in the shops. So language policies in Australia, national language policy. Australia does not have an official language law, but English is widely recognizing as the working language. However, Australia has embraced multiculturalism, which includes support for the linguistic diversity brought by immigration, right? Maybe the Sri Lankans also like to migrate to these countries because it's an English country, right? So our people also learning English language as a link language or an international language or a second language. So they feel that they can survive easily rather than learning a new language, right? So the National Policy on Language in 1987 was a landmark document that recognized the linguistic diversity of the country and emphasized the importance of supporting both English proficiency and the maintenance of community languages. The policy proposed that the government support languages through education, media, and social services. Right? So, in those countries, right? So they are helping people to learn English. For these adults, right? Those migrants, they are giving classes free of charge. They can learn English, right? And bilingual education in Australia. The programs are available in some areas, especially in schools with high number of students from non-English speaking backgrounds. Same type as US. These programs often focus on teaching English as a second language in their home languages. So anyway, they are trying to uh, put them into a dominant English speaking side. However, bilingual education is not universally available, and debates about the effectiveness and costs of such programs continue. There are also challenges in ensuring that children from indigenous and migrant backgrounds receive adequate language support. So, so to bring those children to a certain level, bilingual education is important. And especially in Australia, indigenous language policy is there because there are 250 indigenous languages are there. In recent years, there has been growing recognition of the importance of preserving and revitalizing indigenous languages. So there's an act in 2021 is part of Australia's commitment to improving outcomes for indigenous communities, focusing on the preservation of languages as an essential part of cultural heritage. So so they had 250 indigenous language mean the indigenous culture, right? So uh, if it is endangered, right, one by one, if they are losing that, right? So it's the richness of that country is not going to uh, stay, right? English speaking people will only be there, right? But they will lose all the indigenous people. However, there is a gap between policy goals and actual outcomes, and indigenous languages remain at risk due to the dominance of English and the lack of institutional support. So there are no schools in indigenous language, maybe, right? So they forcibly they have to learn in English. Uh, so language and citizenship, in some instances, language proficiency in English has been tied to citizenship requirements. So that's what, right? They need, when they are issuing these citizenship, right? They have maybe test or interview, right? So if they are this converse in English fluently, I think there is a possibility to issue. They will get the citizenship. So in 2007, the English language requirement for Australian citizenship was tightened, requiring migrants to pass an English language test. Critics argue that this can exclude migrants who may have lived in Australia for many years but are not proficient in English due to age, disability, or lack of opportunity for language learning. So these type of people are only facing issues. So those children who were born in that country will be Australians, UK, the Americans, Canadians, and that means England people, right? So those children will not face this problem, but the elders only facing this problem. So challenges, barriers to access. Non-English speakers, particularly migrants and refugees, can face challenges in accessing public services, healthcare, and education, especially if they lack proficiency in English. Language barriers often contribute to social exclusion, affecting integration into Australian society. So that type of thing is there, right? So, so there is a witness because one of my sister is also, uh, she's a UK citizen, right? So but still she can't work in English, right? For her, it's very difficult to learn that language, right? So husband also died. So after that, it's very difficult to survive there, and she came back to Sri Lanka. So she got this house, right? So they are providing for elder, the government is look after, right? Everything is providing, but anyway, the thing is, it's difficult to survive without language, right? So she can't speak with anybody and can't do work because husband did everything. He didn't let her to do anything alone. So now she can't manage it. So she came to Sri Lanka to stay with her daughter. The language policy, the barriers to access, this is the problem, right? Language barriers often contribute to social exclusion, affecting integration into Australian society. So the discrimination, people who speak language other than English may experience discrimination or stigmatization, particularly in contexts where English proficiency is viewed as a measure of assimilation or national identity. Even in the classroom, sometimes English-speaking children will score more marks than the others, right? So the English speakers will get more opportunity than the other students, even in scholarships or any other universities admissions, right? So those things are there. And indigenous language loss. The loss of indigenous languages remain a significant issue. The effects of colonization, forced assimilation policies, and the dominance of English in education, media, and public life have led to the decline of indigenous languages. So I just think that we also don't have, even the Vedas, they don't have a special school, right, for them. They have to come to the mainstream schools. So definitely the teachers are not going to teach in their language, no, right? So the children will learn the native language, right? Slowly that language will coming as a dead language, right? So the gap between the recognition of the importance of language preservation and the resources available for it remains critical challenge. And the other thing is resource allocation, because in every language they can't have schools, they can't recruit teachers, that type of things also there, right? Because Australia is an English speaking country, their native language is English, so they are giving priority for English. So providing adequate resources for bilingual education, language revitalization programs, and translation services for migrants requires significant investment in a climate of budget cuts and competing priorities. The effectiveness of Australia's language policies depends on sustained government support. So if the government is not ready to spend more money on bilingual education, so this type of the paper will have to face some problem. So Australian language policies in a pluralistic society reflects its complex social and historical context, where issues of migration, cultural identity, and social inclusion intersect. So Australian problem and US problem is little bit similar, right? Those both countries are multicultural countries. So different culture, language people are there. And indigenous people also there. So especially not like US, Australia have 250 indigenous languages, but they are not, those languages are not official language. Only English is official language. So those people also have to learn English, right? So the second generation is going to learn only English, right? So that is the issue they have. Right. So now we are moving to Russia, right? So US and Australia, now Russia. So earlier that US and Australia, of course, English-speaking countries, right? But here Russia is facing different type of thing. Problems of indigenous minority population in Russia. Indigenous minority population in Russia faces a range of social, political, economic, and cultural challenges, many of which stem from the country's vast geographical diversity, historical policies, and the ongoing pressures of modernization, industrialization, and globalization. So Russia also facing these type of problems. So these population, which include various ethnic groups such as Saka, Tuans, Buryats, Chuki, Evenki, Ninets, and others, live across Russia's remote and often harsh northern and Siberian regions. So Russia is also a very huge country, right? So they have different ethnic groups living in different places. So despite being an integral part of Russia's rich cultural mosaic, these groups continue to struggle with significant issues related to land rights, cultural preservation, language loss, economic marginalization, and political representation. Right? So, as young generation, I think you all will know, right? Russia also a developed country. China is also a developed country. They are leading, right? America is the strongest country, right? So, when we are learning the historical part of those countries in languages and ethnic uh, and cultural differences. And key problems faced by indigenous minority population in Russia, language loss, same as Australia, because they also had 250 indigenous languages, but now it is not, right? So even here, language loss, many indigenous language in Russia, with younger generation increasingly shift into Russian as the primary language of communication. In US and Australia, so maybe signal problem.
Yes, madam, we can't hear you properly. Can't hear you, madam.
Hello, ma'am. We can't hear you.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yes, madam, we can hear you now.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
now.
good. It's automatically when it's that um, Zoom is on and on, offing, no, right? So after we this on that again, right? It will automatically switch off the audio. So just now I identify that, right? Okay. So the land and resource right also a problem for indigenous people. So the government is uh, looking for land and things to start the industrialization and to deforesting. So it's damaging the indigenous people's life. So they are not happy with that and they are leaving the places. And here in Russia, that land rights, right? Actually, it is not upheld. The third one is economic marginalization. So especially for Russian indigenous people, so economically they are marginalized. Poverty and unemployment. Indigenous population in Russia often live in remote, economically underdeveloped areas where access to education, healthcare, and employment opportunity is limited. Right, so indigenous people means, right? So I think in Australia, US also, they are not live in city, right? Remote area, so no access to education, right? So they are doing hunting, fishing, and things, right? So they are excluding actually. So the Russian language learning people will be different from these people. So they are disproportionately affected by poverty, unemployment, and lack of access to basic services. Many are reliant on subsistence activities like hunting, fishing, and herding, which are often inadequate to provide economic stability in a modernized society. Right, so their lifestyle is different. They don't want to come to industrialization. So so the economic stability is not there. And so poverty and unemployment is very common among indigenous people. And inadequate social service. Despite Russia's vast wealth and natural resources, indigenous communities often struggle with poor infrastructure, limited access to healthcare, and substandard educational opportunities. So the government is also not much caring about indigenous people, right? So they are having very poor infrastructure. That means maybe house sanitization, water, right? Limited access to healthcare and substandard educational opportunities. So remote settlements, especially in the far north and Siberia, face severe shortages of qualified doctors, teachers, and social services. Right? So the government support, while there are some programs designed to support indigenous people in Russia, such as the Russian federal law on the territories of traditional nature use of indigenous people. Implementation is often inconsistent, and the benefits of these policies are often overshadowed by large-scale economic and industrial projects that disregard indigenous needs. So they are not caring about indigenous people living, right? So what they are doing is they are doing the development. They are establishing new projects, right? So ultimately they have to leave that place, right? So political under-representation and legal challenges. So limited political representation. Indigenous people in Russia have limited representation at the national level. Even in Brazil, the same thing happened, right? Because people are not literate, so they can't vote. They can be only the laborers status. So they can't participate in political voting. So there's no change at all, right? So the philosopher Freire only thought of this, right? He always think of poor people because he's also basically very poor in the early age. So he started a education program for them, right? Uh, so 300 days program, and he made them literate, right? So so after that, so um, these elite group people are against to this Freire because it's making the people illiterate so they can vote, so they can change the government, right? So they did so, right? So even here the same, limited political representation. So mm, these indigenous people, right? They are not represented in national level. Despite the legal recognition of indigenous rights, political power is largely concentrated in the hands of ethnic Russians, and indigenous groups have limited influence on policy decision that affect communities. So they are not going to decide any policy. Russians people are, so those who have learned Russian only dominating, not the indigenous people. So this lack of representation makes it difficult for indigenous people to advocate for their rights, especially in relation to land and resource use. So already they are land, but they can't use, right? So because of the lack of representation in the politics. So legal challenges, indigenous communities often face significant obstacles when trying to assert their rights in court. Russia's legal system can be biased in favor of large companies or state interest, particularly in cases involving land disputes. So the government and the law, everything is against these indigenous people, right? Bias. It is not supporting. So while indigenous people may have a legal framework that protects their rights, in practice, enforcement of these laws is weak and many cases are settled in favor of corporate or state interest, right? So they are neglecting indigenous people, right? They are not giving any consideration, no opportunities for them. And health and well-being, right? So when we are comparing to all Australia and states, US, right? Russia, indigenous people are facing a lot of issues, right? Uh, even in the United States and Australia, the dominant language is English. Because of that, they are losing their identity, right? Here, because of the Russians, right? They are Russian language, they have to learn, right? So they're not caring for indigenous people. and no voting things, no political representation, and no because of that they are losing the lands, resources, and everything, and they are living under poverty. So health and well-being, poor health outcomes. Indigenous population in Russia suffer from poor health outcomes, including higher rates of alcoholism, malnutrition, and mental health issues. The combination of social isolation, poverty, and the stress caused by land and cultural loss contributes to these health challenges. So they're not happy. Government is not looking after their children. There's no access for education. Um, their land is encroaching by the government, right? And they are losing their job opportunities. That means hunting and fishing, right? Everything is against to them. So they are uh, under stress, right? So poverty and the stress caused by land and cultural loss contribute to this health challenge. The alcoholism is more. So alcoholism and substance abuse, many indigenous communities in Russia face severe problems with alcoholism and substance abuse, which have been exacerbated by historical trauma, economic hardships, and the disintegration of traditional social structures, right? So, so in the earlier stage, even in Sri Lanka, so the British people came here, right? And they bring people from India to work here in the estates. So they also did the same thing, right? So they also like Russian indigenous people, right? So they opened lot of taverns, right? So the earning money, everything will be go to the tavern. They are drinking, right? So if they are if they are not saving money, right? If they are becoming drunken, right? So that means they are not going to develop, right? So continuously they are going to work in the estate, right? So in that setup, the same thing is happening in Russia also. So indigenous youth in particular are at risk of substance abuse and related health issues. Mental health, the trauma caused by historical policies of forced assimilation, land loss, and cultural suppression has had lasting effects on the mental health of indigenous population. Increased rates of suicide, depression, and anxiety are prevalent in many remote communities, right? So even now, right, after British colonization, right, 1948, we got the freedom. But when you go to visit this upcountry, right, you can see the lines, right? It's like same, there's no change, right? Uh, it's like British time houses, right? So, if they are living in that very small house, only one room is available, and they have to cook, eat, and sleeping, everything in that place, right? You can see the roof and things, right? They are keeping lot of stones, right? So that type of life is there, right? So then even now, the government is not giving more priority for them, right? So uh, that means they are treating like Russian indigenous people, right? Um, and climate change and environmental vulnerability, impact of climate change. So all the other things also against them, and the climate is also against. Indigenous communities, particularly those in Russian Arctic and Siberia, are especially vulnerable to the effects of climate change. So rising temperatures, melting permafrost, and changing migration patterns of animals, especially for reindeer herders, are disrupting traditional livelihoods. The thawing of permafrost also affects infrastructure and transportation in these regions, making it more difficult for indigenous people to access essential service and resources. So even the climate is also there. So very remote area they are living, right? In that climate also, not permitting them to live in peaceful life, right? So resource exploitation and environmental damage. Climate change is compounded by the rapid expansion of resource extraction industries in the Arctic and Siberian regions, which not only accelerates environmental degradation, but also exacerbates the impacts of climate change on indigenous communities. Right? So vulnerable group is indigenous people in Russia, right? So, so you can, I think, even I'm also learning these things from these Russian indigenous people, how they are facing challenges. Even in Africa, right? We will learn that also. South Africa people, how they suffered, right? Because of these cultural, ethnic issues, right? Uh, so because of that only, so how these people can learn, right? So there's no access to education, right? Because the life is vulnerable and economically not sound, right? And the alcoholism is there, right? Uh, so definitely they are not going to send the children to school, right? Even the children also not in a position to learn. And discrimination and social exclusion, racism and stereotyping. Indigenous peoples in Russia often face discrimination and marginalization in society. They are sometimes stereotyped as backward or primitive and can be excluded from mainstream Russian society, particularly in urban areas. So in India, there's this race called Dalit, right? So not now, right? In the early stage, uh, that Dalit people also backward and primitive, right? So they can't use normal people's places. They can't enter to the Kovil or church or anything, and they can't do any jobs, right? They even no access for education, right? That type of. So the same thing is with here, racism and stereotyping. So the social exclusion can further limit their access to education, healthcare, and employment opportunities. Right? So definitely these indigenous people will die, right? And erase it. Those languages also will be dead soon, right? So uh, sometimes after 20, 25 years, there will be no indigenous people in these countries. And loss of traditional identity, the pressure to assimilate into Russian society often leads to a loss of traditional identity and cultural practices. Indigenous youth especially face the challenge of balancing their traditional heritage with the need to integrate into a more modern and economically successful Russian society, right? So you have to feel for these people because how they are suffering, right? So not now, right? But anyway, in each country, there are problems, right? You can see government and international responses. While the Russian government has taken some steps to address the issues facing indigenous communities, the effectiveness of these efforts remains matter of debate. So now they are formulating laws. The Russian Federation's 1999 law on indigenous people provides legal protection for the cultural, economic, and social rights of indigenous people, including recognition of their right to traditional lands. However, enforcement remains weak and the law does not provide sufficient protection from the effects of industrialization and state policies. So they have law, but it is not implementing, right? So international pressure, international organizations such as United Nations and the International Labour Organization have called on Russia to improve the situation of its indigenous people. In 2007, Russia ratified the ILO Convention number 169 on indigenous and tribal people, which commits the country to protecting the rights of indigenous people. So it's very recent, 2007, right? So now we are in 2025. So really 18 years before, right? So which commits the country to protecting the rights of indigenous people. However, many advocates argue that Russia has not adequately implemented the convention provision, right? So these are recent things, right? Then still you can think of these indigenous people have facing lot of issues. Indigenous advocacy groups, indigenous leaders and organizations with Russia have been pushing for greater recognition and support for their communities. Many are advocating for stronger legal protection for land rights, better education and health services, and more active involvement in decision-making process related to their territories and culture. So they are now fighting for their rights. Indigenous leaders and organizations within Russia, right, have been pushing for greater recognition and support for their communities, right? So the government is not helping for them, considering them, giving rights to them, so they are fighting. So conclusion, indigenous minority population in Russia face a complex set of challenges rooted in historical and ongoing policies of assimilation, exploitation, and marginalization. So while there have been some efforts to address these issues, including legal recognition of rights and the promotion of cultural preservation, significant gaps remain. To address this problem facing indigenous communities, Russia will need to take stronger action to ensure that indigenous people's rights are respected, that their languages and cultures are protected, and that they have a meaningful voice in decisions affecting their lands, resources, and futures, right? So, uh, under this Russia, right, almost they have spoken regarding indigenous people and what is happening to them and how they are marginalized. So that indigenous people are the vulnerable group in Russia, right? So the encroaching lands and their livelihood, everything is done by the Government. So the government is against these indigenous people, right? They are formulating laws but not implementing, right? So that type of thing is there in Russia, right? So under comparative education, we have compared 3 countries, right? United States, how so why we are talking about indigenous people? Because their language is different, right? So those 3 countries, especially United States, Australia, are dominating. Their dominating language is English. Russian people's dominating language is Russian. So they are not going to consider indigenous people language because they don't have access to their own language schools, right? Forcibly they have to learn in English. They have to go to the mainstream schools, right? So when we are comparing the education, so indigenous people, of course, the education will be very poor, excluded, right? And they don't have any opportunity to access for the education. So these things actually, if you're learning, it's very good, right? Right. So for a change, uh, uh, so under United States, Australia, and Russia, we learn so the heartfelt things, right? So how people are facing a lot of issues and problem, right? And we have to think about our country also, right? So even our country is also facing a lot of problems, right? Current problems and issues in education, issues in education, right? Sri Lankan education. So here, education is the most powerful weapon we can use to change the world. So this is Nelson Mandela's golden words, right? So that's what. So now we have learned about indigenous people in 3 countries now. So they don't have this opportunity, right? Education is the most powerful weapon we can use to change the world. So there's no access to education for those people. So here you can see which country has best education system in the world. See, but this is a little bit old, right? Sometimes it might change now, right? So almost 10 years old for these data. Before 10 years, right, the first place has gone to South Korea, right? And second, Japan, third, Singapore, fourth, Hong Kong, fifth, Finland, sixth, UK, 7 Canada, 8 Netherlands, 9 Ireland, 10 Poland. And the Sri Lanka just mentioned, right? See the GDP per capita, right? 34, 36, 64. Singapore is the highest, right? 39. That means the earning of one person, US dollars, right? UK 38, Canada 44, Netherlands 42, Ireland 53, Poland 21, and Sri Lanka 3,159. Very low per capita. USD is very low in Sri Lanka. The life, that means pattern, that means the life expectation, right? And the literacy rate, of course, right? 97.9 South Korea, Japan 99, Singapore 95.9, right? So it's a homework for you all. Find what is the rank now available. That means which country has the best education system in the world in 2025, right? Find out that for the next class, right? So here Sri Lankan literacy rate, of course, 98.1. Finland, 100%, right? And right, UK, Canada, Netherlands, Ireland, Poland, those Commonwealth countries are behind to the Asian countries. That is also you have to consider, right? South Korea, Japan, Singapore, Hong Kong, Finland, and after that only UK and Canada, right? So in Sri Lanka, right, in 2015, that's what I told before 10 years, right? So in 2015, 4 million, right? That means 4 million students are learning in schools. Total expenditure 112,584. Schools 10,144. Now 10,799. Right? Maybe more than that even. Right? Teachers 236,988. A teacher per rate 17.41. GDP education 1.53, and government expenditure on education is 6.23. GCA level pass rate is 61.25, right? So we have to find out these data in 2025. This is 2015 one. So unemployment by level of education, right? So there are below grade 6, grade 6 to 10 people are there because they are dropping out, right? They are leaving and doing jobs. GCO level people are there, GCA level and above, right? So you can see, right? Male, female, total. 2012, yellow color is grade 6 to 10, no? 46.8, 28.8, 37.4. Right, GCA level, blue, right? So in 2012, female GCA level above 43.1. Male 21.5. So see the difference, right? In 2014 also, male have grade 6 to 10 qualification more. But ladies, female have A-level qualification. That means ladies are learning more than gents now, right? So here it shows the unemployment, right? So even they have qualified A level and above, but there's no job, right? So unemployment by level of education, right? Below grade 6 also don't have job. GCO level also don't have. Grade 6 to 10, GCA level above. The unemployment by level of education is this much in 2012 and 2014. But we have to find out how it is in 2025. And emerging issues is with youth, inaccessibility of quality of education and training, right? And the other thing is look for a job. What type of job they are expecting? Government job, right? So 15 to 24 years reported for the first quarter 2015 is 21.7%. Right? So inaccessibility of quality of education and training, 21.7%. So GCE O-level pass rate increased, right? So in 2015, you can see that increasing 69, 64 to 69, 47 to 45, 68, 68, 55, 55. There's no much change, right? And major reason to drop in O-level. So Tamil 25% dropout, Sinhala 14% dropout. Because of mathematics, 45% dropout. So higher education opportunity, National University, 16%. Now it's increased up to 40,000. So it will become 20-25%, right? 8% go abroad to pursue their studies. Vocational education, 8%. Higher diploma, 4%. Non-autonomous degree awarding institutes, LIT, IT, ITS, 5%. Entrance membership for professional bodies, 5%. SIMA, BCA, CCA, ACCA, ICACL. Quality for the university, 63%. That means qualified. Sorry, 63% students are qualified, but they are taking only 16 to 25%. So here, major challenges in providing employment and meeting aspiration of youth. So education is here, employers and the industries are there. So we have to bring these, we have to bridge the gap, right? So through education only we can do that. If we are giving proper education accepted by the employer, we can fill this gap, right? So future opportunities, computing 60%, right? So for the IT, job opportunities are more. Engineering 26, maths 3%, physical sciences 5%, life sciences 5%. So that's what, so as teachers, right, you all have to guide the students, right, to select the correct career, right? So they have to check which career will be more benefit, giving benefit in the future, right? Without knowing anything, right? Our children are blindly selecting medicine, right? That means biological sciences, physical sciences, agricultural sciences. So if they are not qualified, what they are going to do, right? So in that way, they have to think, and according to their talents, potential, they have to select the stream. Now only they have introduced the technical stream, right? Global internet penetration in 2015. So internet usage, right? East Asia 51%. Southeast Asia 33%. South Asia 19%. Central Asia 38%. So where are we here? Right? So 33%. Right? So in that zone only, Sri Lanka. Education is in the palm of your hand. So this is, it's a very good educational tool, but students are not using for education, right? Other purpose only they are using. And it is sometimes irritating, right? When they're even in the classroom, they are using, right? So actually, that should be restricted. Technology investments are changing global education. You can see all are using technical devices. Time has come to work, not to fight. And strategy is a continuous process, keep current. So the children must learn actively, right? So the teachers are facilitating, children are learning. New models for education are creating exciting opportunities. How is your world changing? Let's have conversation. Higher education. This is regarded as the most valuable stage of one's life. Right? So up to A level, it's an automatic thing, no, right? Anyway, anyone who wish to continue the education can be there for grade 13 year, right? 13 years. So higher education. Who is going to do higher education, right? So higher education granting is done in two ways, through private colleges, through government universities. Now, a lot of private universities also there, private campus or universities. So now there are a lot of opportunities, right? Even you can start your degree here and complete another country, right? So that will give opportunity for you to be there, to get PR, right? You can work there. So here it's S.P. Disanayaka. Earlier he was the higher education minister, right? So degree guide. Do we need a change? Higher education needs to be more innovative. Bureaucracy has to be eliminated. PGIA Research Center. Inefficiencies in management, other university disclosable events should be minimized. Right? So we have to start many universities because a lot of students are qualified for university education, but we don't have enough of university to accommodate the students. Universities should practice attaining goal, creating employable graduates through an efficient, effective education system while implementing proper planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. Most of the multinational companies are hiring foreign graduates, not the Sri Lankan graduates. Why? Why? So they did a research, right? Survey. Most of the these multinational companies have, that means Sri Lankan students, but foreign graduates. So they have the skill, right? And they are employable. Our people have knowledge, but only knowledge, not skill, right? So process input, process output, knowledge on subjects and possible opportunities in the marketplace, developing skills and abilities. You have to input this. Blending the inputs together and giving overall knowledge. How you're giving, that means teaching methodology. Output, employable, learn graduates to the society. This is the process we need. Our university is driven by market myopia. Market myopia is the short-sightedness of the business. This is mainly due to failure of proper management. So universities too are driven by market myopia since they do not concentrate on the changing need of the society. But now, of course, so it's a questionable criticism, no, employable graduates. So now what they are doing is they are giving internship for students, right? So they are working in the last semester. They have to go and work with one company and learn lot of skills from them, right? If they are working well, if they are fit that for the position, that company will hire them. Areas where universities could be trapped in market, focusing mainly on the syllabus, less practical knowledge given, uncertainty of the future market need, not understanding the gaps in the market, product driven and not market driven, not maintaining the required quality or standard. Right? So because of this, we are calling them not unemployable graduate. Is quality a debatable question? Some private universities provide degrees in 6 months for a higher price. Is this quality? 1, 2, 3 college degree count the smarter path to a higher education. Short-term gain knowledge would lead to a permanent short-sightedness. Right? So even though there are mismatching things also happening, right? So you have to think of your qualification. So are universities employment driven or market driven? Employment driven is focusing more on the job role and making the students employable. And market driven is forecasting the future market need, the adapting the students to fit into the change, right? So anyway, our intention, right, why we are learning to obtain a job, go for a, anyway, we need a job to live, right? So the education, right, must give skillful people. So definitely they will be placed in any job, right? So what is most suited? There should be a fair balance between employment oriented and market oriented. So that's what employment market, both have to have 50-50%, right? So if we are looking for more marketing, that is also not suitable for the community. And it is being taught in many universities and colleges to management level students, but mainly the office package. Has some one ever decided to teach analytical software of students? So the universities and the lecturers have to decide what type of education is needed for student, right? Are universities responsible to find jobs? Right, so they can send them for internship, but not for finding jobs. Universities can only give the required knowledge and make the students employable. Learn students and help them to foresee market opportunities and gaps. Creating students who fit in the future opportunities in the marketplace. Right, so the other countries are looking that, right? They are preparing students to fill the gap in the marketing field. Why are private universities given priority when granting employment? Quality, discipline. So under discipline, language and market oriented, hard work, technology, and the psychology is also needed. You have to understand the people. So education has produced a vast population able to read but unable to distinguish what is worth reading. So what knowledge that needs to be given should be decided by universities. There should be innovativeness and quality carved into the knowledge given. So education is not the answer to the question. Education is the means to the answer to all questions. So universities have huge responsibility in giving the education that helps to answer all questions in the outer world. So universities must be self-sufficient, right? And here you must be knowing this person, right? Ajit Nibad Kabral, Central Bank. He's person who is responsible. Therefore, our universities have to stay engaged and stand close to dialogue with the industry by being active and flexible to put out high quality products who will give value to their organizations. Right, so why unemployment, right? They are not suitable for jobs. That's what they are not selected for places, right? So, especially in Sri Lanka, if they don't have any job, they are not getting any job, they are selecting, then only they are coming for teaching. But in the other countries, first preference for teaching. The best people will be in the teaching, right? The government is selecting best people for teaching. The higher education system needs to be changed into having a balance between employment oriented and market oriented. This process should start from secondary education system. Higher education is driven by market myopia, and this has to change by properly manage and cater to the market need. So universities are not responsible in finding jobs, but they are responsible in giving quality education and cater to fill the gap in the marketplace by helping students to prepare for a better future. So in most of the foreign universities, they are doing community projects. So they have to understand the people need. According to that, they have to innovate projects, right? So if they are working with the community, even during the school time, university time, right? So they will find easy to work with community people. So there should be quality improvement in higher education. The correct policy implication for higher education is required. Need a strategic plan for Sri Lankan education to overcome the present issues. So now I think they are going to make a huge change in education system. almost those things are there in YouTube, right? Please, as teachers, please, you have to know what are the changes taken place in education system, right? Without that, you can't do good teaching. Finally, the purpose of education is to replace an empty mind with an open one. So aims and objective of education in Sri Lanka, national goals of Sri Lanka, the achievement of social cohesion, national integrity and national unity, the establishment of a passive pattern of social justice, the evolution of the sustainable pattern of social justice, right? There are 9 national goals, right? So I think it's in the textbooks, you can read it, right? Right, so so I gave a small homework for y'all, right? Find out 2025, right? So how the rank, right? The first 10 rank goes to which countries now in 2025, right? Okay, good night. We'll meet next week. Thank you.
Good night, madam. Thank you, madam.
Thank you, madam. Good night.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, I will upload this for you all. Right, I have uploaded, right? You can go through that.